I just want to mention a few biographical and bibliographical data at the very beginning, because I think it might be helpful to understand a little bit better some of important methodological figures that I will be using today for this lecture. This book that Enke was talking about, Hieroglyphs of Jealousy, was actually published in year 2008. It was published by Euro-Balkan Institute in Skopje, but the text itself was written, you know, like in the year 2000. Why I'm mentioning this? It's 15 years ago, and it was part of my MPhil thesis that I did at Central European University, you know, like, and I am happy to say that some of my colleagues from that period are also here with us tonight. Laima is here, you know, like, so I just want to say to Laima, I did some other things, you know, in these 15 years, you know, like, not, I'm not stuck with jealousy. Why I'm saying this? Because it's a weird feeling, you know, like, to come back, probably all of you know that feeling, you know, like that, coming back to something that you wrote 15 years ago and trying to make it alive as an argument. Meanwhile, you know, like, you were thinking about different things, you know, like, and recently, as also Anke said, I published the other book, which is rather different, you know, like, has a rather different line of thinking than the one that I will be talking about tonight. But what is, I think, more important is, while I was thinking how to approach this text, which is not mine in a way anymore, I thought that there are at least two methodological things that I find very useful. First one is something that I'm recalling here, Jose Munoz, and his idea of unstraight temporality, actually, which probably most of you, you're aware of this, but for the purposes of this topic that I will be using today, it's kind of this idea that you go back to past ideas in order to try to use them for the articulation of future alternatives. So in a way, this deconstruction of this linear idea of temporality is also something that might be useful for me, going back to old argument in order to make it alive and to try to use it as a political argument for future alternatives and future ideas. Second thing is something that I will be using the notion of palimpsest, and I called it methodology of palimpsest. I'm not sure if there such a thing exists at all. But palimpsest is a metaphor that my colleague from actually from Central European University and from this program in gender studies, Bulgarian thinker, poet Nadia Radulova, she wrote her dissertation on that notion, and for years she was brainstorming, you know, how this, the notion of palimpsest can be very useful, you know, like in theoretical and political discussions, you know, like, and finally now I'm using it, you know, like, so it's this metaphor of the palimpsest where the layers of narration and text are overlapping, you know, like, so in a way, for me, I found it very useful because I cannot decide anymore, you know, like, if it's the old argument and the old text that I will be talking about today, or is it the new one, although I might for a moment, you know, like, read the parts of it and recall the same notions, you know, like, as I was using 15 years ago. There is one moment also that I find useful, you know, like, that I find as an important thing to why I was mentioning when the text was written. Because probably, you know, like, if this argument from Hieroglyphs of Jealousy that I was trying to articulate, you know, like 15 years ago, today it will belong to the body of literature that it's recognized and labeled today as affect theory.